Welcome, listeners, to another episode of the Banquet Hall podcast. I got my nice sweater on today because I'm joined by the man, the myth, the legend himself, Joe Mack. Joe, how you doing today?
I'm good, brother. How you and the sweater doing?
we doing good over here on this side. We recording this on Dr. Martin Luther King Day, so got some good energy in the air. Been with community all day today, so looking forward to chopping it up with you. New listeners, make sure y'all follow the podcast at Banquet Hall Pod. Make sure after the episode y'all stay to tune in with another story. We got a lot of great individuals who have been on the podcast and looking forward to making Joe part of that legacy. So for the first part of the podcast, I usually open up with some type of random icebreaker question. And since this is Martin Luther King Day that we're recording this, the question I have for you, Joe, is what do I want to say? Let's say, what is your dream for the future for like our community as Black people? Like, what's one of your dreams? I know you have plenty of them, but what's one that you want to share with the folks?
My dream is to see Tulsa, Oklahoma get back to what it once was. And that's because, one, I got plans to move down there by the end of this year. Two, I'm real integrated with the community down there because of the shows I did. It pains me every time I go back to see the Greenwood district, which was the district where, of course, it was 10,000 of us that own community, own everything that got bombed. Every time I go back, it becomes more and more gentrified. So my dream is to see Tulsa like return to its old glory. Will I see that in my lifetime? Probably not. But, if I could play a part in making it better, then that's definitely part of the dream.
Absolutely. I rock with that. I had a guest on earlier on in the podcast, Devon, who is one of the co-owners and founders of Play Black Wall Street, the board game. Highly encourage listeners to check that out and learn more about the history of Tulsa, Oklahoma. There's a lot of rich history in Tulsa, and it's great that you mentioned that, because I just randomly was thinking on the drive back from LA yesterday that I want to visit Tulsa because I've never been to Oklahoma. I've never been to Tulsa, Oklahoma, and just to be able to see what the land is like there. Obviously, it's been gentrified, like you've mentioned, but just knowing the history of our peoples there is so important. And I know, as someone as pro-Black as yourself, I know history is very important to you.
Yeah, it's dope. I just want to clear the air too, because I know my mom said it. A lot of people like, why you want to go to Tulsa? As we see that on First 48. Well, you see Miami on First 48. You see Dallas on it's violence everywhere. And truthfully, you go to Tulsa, it's just like anywhere else. A few streets, that you'd be like, okay, don't stay over here. But it's just like any other big city. Tulsa is rich. A lot of people friendly down there. What we got taco shops out here. They got jazz clubs down there. They love art. They love music. Tulsa is definitely a great place. And when you get the chance, man, I could plug you with my people down there. They give you a tour and everything. So, yeah, if you can get down there, get down there.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm happy that you made that clear, because I feel like, especially for my folks over in California, I feel like we have this notion that racism only exists in certain parts of the world and certain parts of the South, where it's like, it's some of the most racist shit I've experienced being in San Diego.
Yeah, it's everywhere. I mean, it's going to be deeper levels. Like, I'm from Indiana, so that's where the Klan started. So anytime we left Lake County, where East Chicago, Gary and Hammond was, we go outside the county to play a game. I mean, I've been on the court where it's been white sheets literally in the stands. You got sundown towns like Martinsville, Indiana, which you have to pass through to get to IU Bloomington. And, the South and Midwest is heavy, but, just because of that don't mean it doesn't exist on this coast. I mean, Seattle, Boise, Idaho, places like that where it's a little Black population. So when they don't see you a lot except on TV, their first inkling may be their trouble. They're here to cause strife and everything. So it definitely exists everywhere.
Absolutely. And you mentioned being from Indiana, and that's a good segue to the first formal question of the podcast. Where exactly are you from in Indiana, and how did that shape who you have become as a person?
So I'm from East Chicago, Indiana. If that sounds weird to people, just know there's an East St. Louis, Illinois. There's a West Memphis, Arkansas. There's a Philadelphia, Mississippi. I know it sounds crazy, but East Chicago, Indiana, we're literally on the Illinois border. So we grew up with cats from Chicago, and then we had Gary on the other side. People heard Gary, Freddie Gibbs, Michael Jackson, and with Chicago and Gary being two murder caps, you can just imagine how we were in the middle. So it was fun growing up. You know, our big thing back home was basketball. We got the largest high school basketball gym in the nation. So a lot of us played basketball. We stuck to sports. You know, but you know, same trials that anybody growing up in any hood go through: poverty, gangs, drugs, all that. But um, we found our way. We found our niches. You know, like I said, with Mike Jackson being from Northwest Indiana, uh, performance art was huge. It was huge, especially in Gary. But now, through the turn of the century, when I was growing up, my city was 35 to 40,000. Gary was well over 200,000. Now Gary has less than 60,000 people
Oh wow.
because the industries have dried up. The city's about 60% abandoned. We all know what's going on with Chicago. Chicago had about 3 million when I was growing up. Now it's probably 2 point something, and they're gentrifying every part of the city they possibly can. When they got rid of Jewtown, which was, you know, it's not an offensive term, that's what we called it. That's what the Jews called it. It was the Jewish side of town. It was adjacent to the White Sox Stadium, their own neighborhood, sell their own stuff. You know, for us black folks, you know, Jewtown was like, that was like our Hollywood. But when they gentrified Jewtown, that's when you know it was getting bad. Like if they're pushing them out, then yeah, there's no limit to what they're going to do. So that's how it was.
Absolutely. And you mentioned basketball being so big, and I always joke that you're a Lakers fan, but the people know that you're actually a Pacers fan, and sports is really big for
Mm,
you. One of our last interactions was at the San Diego Poetry Slam finals a couple weeks ago, and literally all before the
mm,
slam, you over here watching a Michigan game, like just going crazy.
mhm. My boys pulled it off, man. My boys pulled it off. Got number 12.
Number 12, a good feeling indeed. I feel like as much as people talk about sports as just like this thing that dudes do, like I think there's such fun in the spirit of competition, the camaraderie with sports, even sports banter. Like every Friday night at Black Expression when we talk and mess about the Lakers or the Pacers, like it's funny, but it's also like, yeah, this is why I like sports because it could get like
Yeah,
good, harmless fun. Like neither of us getting paid by either of those organizations, but you know that I don't rock with the Pacers and you don't rock with the Lakers.
exactly. But it's good that we can keep it in that element because, like I said, growing up where I grew up,
Oh yeah.
especially in high school used to be real bad. Like, and it'd be crazy sometimes. We're playing the game and you got grown adults in the stands fighting. Like, yo, like, why the parents like scrapping and they stopping the game? And then it's just crazy, man. So like, especially at the age I'm at now, like, yo, we can have a good sports discussion, but if you trying to kill me over it, bro, you got it. I don't want it. Whatever you say goes.
Man, it's definitely not that deep at all. Like Indiana love their basketball and LA love our Lakers, but I'm not about to die for the Lakers. As much as I'll
Yeah,
cap like I'm really about to ride for the Lakers, it's all in the spirit of competition and fun. When it come down to it, like I said, Lakers ain't paying not a single one of my bills.
at all, at all.
And so from Indiana, you're currently residing in San Diego. What was that journey to San Diego? What brought you to the city?
Military, like a lot of people. For me, it was funny. So when I finished my job school with learning to be a welder, we get these dream sheets. You get to pick three places. So I picked like Hawaii. I picked Pensacola, Florida, because I thought all of Florida was like I thought Miami was Florida, you know. And then I picked like Italy. So I'm thinking, yo, they about to send me to Hawaii. I'm about to go to Miami. They sent me to San Diego. The only thing I knew about California was Death Row Records and weirdos in Frisco. So I got out here. I was like, man, I don't want to be here. But of course, I'm 18 years old. I don't know any better. And then the longer I stayed out here, the more I fell in love with it. And it got to the point to where my parents would call me, "You coming home Christmas?" "No, it's 80 degrees. It's palm trees. I'm going to the beach." So that's what brought me to San Diego. I left for 2 years to go live in Guam. That's a little small island in Southeast Asia, but then I came right back. You know, they tried to get me to go to Virginia. I said, "Nah, I'm good. Let me go back to the good life, palm trees, nice weather, beautiful women, all that." So San Diego is always good with me.
You're not tired of the California winters yet?
Oh man, they're brutal. I mean, but I'm used to it. Whew, was it brutal 70-degree winter day today? Man, I'm bummed. I'm bombed down in the house, man. Hoping we don't freeze to death.
Man, it's a struggle out here. I was at my grandma's house yesterday, and the ice cream truck came down the street. I'm like, man, it must be good to be raised in Southern California. You got the ice cream truck coming down the block in
Right.
early January. But
That's
that's
crazy, man. Because I remember growing up, like, bruh, like -30-degree wind chill. School wasn't called off. If you can get out the house, they was gonna plow, the buses was gonna come. We was gonna have school. Life was gonna go on its grand merry way. So, just be out here in this sunny. I don't got to shovel no snow. I ain't got to worry about sliding on black ice or, your friends driving by in the car and throwing a snowball at you. That's all good.
I feel like sometimes when I hear my friends talk about life in the winter from places like the Midwest or East Coast, it seems like some shit out of a movie. I'm just like, this is what I
Yeah.
watched growing up, but
Hmm.
y'all really lived the snowball fights and the school days and whatnot. It's crazy.
Yeah. It was wild times back then, but it was fun though.
I can imagine. As I was preparing for this episode, I was on your website, joemacspeaks.com. And one, I want to affirm and appreciate how you keep your website updated. Like it's fresh, it's up to date. Even as soon as like this slam a couple weeks ago, like everything that you're doing is up to date on the website. And I really appreciate when people have their websites updated. But learned a
Mhm.
lot about you from reading your bio. But I wanted you to have the opportunity to speak for yourself for this next question in terms of how you define yourself as an artist or creative.
How I define myself as an artist and creative, very unbalanced. And what I mean by that is I can shift from so many subjects. Like I'm not known as just a love author or love poet or just this pro-black author and poet. I could shift to so many subjects. Like one minute I could just talk about some ratchet shit. The next minute I could talk about, the missexualization of black boys, like in my piece of Boys' Values. So I don't I think a big mistake a lot of artists and creators make is they believe they have to be one way. And I don't want to be known as one way. It's like my boy Preston Clark. You seen him earlier today. He was talking to me a few weeks ago. He's like, "Yeah, you might be crazy, but you're loyal." So if like you got that loyal friend, I don't always agree with him. He do got some screws loose, but the guy's loyal. He's gonna be there. So I think it's good to have a healthy balance of just different personalities, but you just have to know when to be a certain person in whatever certain situation.
Absolutely. And I think that's why I take so much pride in having artists have the opportunity to talk about the different facets that make themselves artists, because I would never just define you as a poet or just define you as a spoken word artist, because you're so much more than that. And I think that shows through everything you put out. And one thing that was very evident as I was reading through your website was that your experience with the Navy shaped your perspective of the world as an artist, as I'm sure is very reasonable and rational to anybody who would think about an experience in the Navy. But in what ways do you feel the Navy impacted the way that, or shaped your art and impacted the way you perform your art?
For me, it was pretty much on my deployments. So when you're on deployment, you're pretty much going somewhere if your schedule is not affected by anything major, you're somewhere different every 2 weeks. So one day you're in Hawaii, the next day you're in Hong Kong with, all the Chinese, and then you go to Malaysia, then it's all black folks. Then you might be in Africa, then you might be in the Middle East. So having to adapt to different cultures, different lifestyles, and given a chance to just interact with different locals and learn different customs and everything, it definitely shaped me more so as a human than an artist, because I learned to look at things from so many different perspectives. Like you look in the US, here we'll throw trash on the ground like it's nothing, we'll spit, people be rude, shout things from cars. But you go to a place like Singapore, yeah, you get caught littering. It's like, hey, you
It's
can pay this
over.
$1,000 fine, or you can get a cane in the back. Which one you want? And you be like, whoa. And then obviously, Dubai, you punch a woman in
Yeah,
Dubai, yeah, it's a wrap. So just learning different customs, traditions, and just seeing how people interact differently around the world. It shaped me as an artist and more so a human.
mm, I love that. And I think that that's something as I've got an opportunity to travel to other countries more and more, is that I really notice it's just, I encourage anyone listening to this, if you haven't gone out of the country, go out of the country, get out of the bubble of the United States, just to see one, how different cultures interact with the world, interact with their homeland. Also to see how America is viewed from other places, because I think that there's a sense of meritocracy, or this pro-Americanness where it's like, we're the best out here because we have X,
Yeah,
Y, and Z resources, and we get full of ourselves a lot. And I think it's good for people to experience the other viewpoint of that as well.
true.
And so, want to get started with talking about slam poetry specifically. And I pulled this really great quote from your website: 3 great minutes on stage is the result of 100 hours of preparation, Joe McClain Jr. And I think that quote is very indicative of why I appreciate having artists on the podcast, because I say this a lot. When you go to an open mic, when you go to a poetry slam, you get 3 to 5 minutes of somebody's experiences. But one, you don't know the rest of their story. Two, you don't know how hard they worked on these things and grinding out. Like, slam poetry is a lot more than just someone getting up for 3 minutes and talking. Like, there's a lot that goes into that. So my first question within slam is, for people that don't know, what makes slam poetry different than like your general type of poem that people might be more familiar with?
Well, the first thing is just the obviously competition factor. It's not just you going up. Sorry about that. It's not just you going up there competing. It's about, I mean, not just about you going up there saying some words. You're actually competing against others. So, you just don't want to deliver your message in a normal way. You want to have the right voice tones. You want to say words and phrases that capture the crowd. You want to make eye contact with them. You want to make them feel everything that you say, every movement. You want to make them feel. So that's the first major difference between just regular poetry and slam poetry. And what was the next part of the question?
That was really the gist of it. Like, what makes
Oh,
slam
okay.
poetry different? And
Okay,
then,
yeah. So that's pretty much what it is.
yeah, and what made you want to pursue slam poetry as a passion? Like, what got you into slam?
A guy by the name of Jonathan Deacon Blair. He used to be on San Diego Slam team. I got honest, I ain't used to like slam. I used to look at it as, why are people battling to say the most positive thing? I thought slam was stupid, and I said I would never slam. But when I thought I was good, I really sucked. And Deacon pulled me aside one day before I went overseas for 2 years and basically said, "Hey, you need to work on your craft. You're not that good." But he said it in a way that I understood it and didn't break me down. So
Mm.
once I started to study it and everything, then I said, okay, I could try it when I get back. And then, April 3rd, 2014, I went to then Elevated, and they threw me up first, and I performed this piece called "Knock Knock Black Ice" from Def Poetry Jam was there, and ended up having an interview, with him. So that was the first time I really got into slam, and then I just kept progressing and working on it. And 2019 made the individual World Poetry Slam, winning San Diego Slam, the chance to represent them, finished 24th in the world, and just been touring from there. So it's definitely been a blessing. I'm definitely glad I tapped into it.
And I'm definitely glad you tapped into it too, because as someone who has heard you perform at slams as well as open mics, you definitely have a gift, and your passion shows throughout all of the art that you put out there. And you mentioned some of the awards and recognitions that uh, you've earned throughout your life as a slam poet and as an artist. And I highly encourage folks to go on your website, joemacspeaks.com, and read through your resume, because I know, as I think you mentioned somewhere in your bio or somewhere in your website, that you want to make sure that you come across as more than just your accolades. But I still think it's very important for people to
Mhm.
recognize just how much talent and hard work goes into everything you've accomplished. Was there any specific competition or performance of yours that stands out as most meaningful to you throughout your career as a slam poet?
August 2019, when I won the San Diego Last Chance Slam and won the chance to represent San Diego Slam at the Worlds. It was like, bro, I really worked this hard, and I just made the world tournament. And then to get to the world tournament was in San Diego that year. And then, I'm thinking I got my best prepared, and then you hear these other cats, you like, damn, my best is their warm up, So it's like I still got a lot of work to do, but still to finish top 25 in the world. And Preston called me that morning because I had to make top 14 to make final stage. I was laying in bed with my then girlfriend, and he was like, "Yo, you finished 24th," and I was kind of down. He was like, "Look at it like this: when you look at college football rankings, you only care about the top 25. You should be proud of yourself." And after that, I booked my chest up, slapped my girlfriend booty. Hey, I'm happy. Let's go get some breakfast. So, everything was well after that. So, yeah, that was my most meaningful right there.
I think that might have been the most Joe Max sentence I ever heard in my life.
Well, I did because I
uh,
remember she was wearing she was wearing them Eminem, her little Eminem night stuff. So yeah, she knew I liked them. It was green too. I don't forget no big yams. I don't forget no yams now. I don't do that.
Never change, Joe. Never change. um, Folks who have heard you perform know that you have one of your pieces that talks about people that are using their phones during slams, or just like the art of slamming. And as a podcast host, I have to talk about this on a pod because I feel like it's my duty to the people to talk about some of the pet peeves of poetry slamming, or just why it's important to you that people take the art of slam serious. Why is that important?
Because it's you're trying to connect with the audience. You're there as a performance artist. So when you're in that realm of quote unquote slam, it is your job and duty, if you're going to do it, to perform at the best of your abilities. Then you come into a competition reading, right then. If I'm a judge and I don't know nobody, I see you pull out your phone, you're going to get a 5. One, I could give you a 0, but I do understand that regardless if you use a phone, paper, whatever, it takes a lot just to get up there and bare your soul. But at the same time, in bearing your soul, you have to realize the level you're at. Like, this is slam, this is competition. Proper preparation prevents poor performance. You should have studied this, been in the mirror, mastering it hundreds of times, cuss yourself out, toss the animal across the house. Please don't do that. But you know what I mean? So, and I feel it's like it's detrimental to the craft, because I see many people getting in these slams now with phones, and I'm like, yo, you had a chance to practice that at the open mic, the coffee shop. That's what events like that are for. Hey, I don't know this piece. Let me see how y'all rock with it. So let me say it at the open mic. Okay, they rock with it. So now let me go practice. So when I get in the main competition, I could do it up. And it pisses me off because I prepare I prepare well. Like, even if I F up a piece, at least I can go to bed knowing that, okay, I prepared. I may have stumbled. I just got to go back to the practice blocks, figure out where I messed up, and then we could come back next time. But I could not go to sleep knowing that I went up there and I gave a half-ass performance to not only the people, but to myself, because I'm not meeting my standards.
Mm. I love that. And I think that it's beautiful to hear you say it that way, because I think sometimes when we're in the moment and we hear pieces like that, some people think like, oh, he's just trying to poke fun at people who are reading off their phone. But it's like, no, like there's talent that goes into it. Like, I'm sure if I walk on
Yeah.
the court and tell LeBron James, if I'm just on an NBA court and I'm just fucking around, LeBron will be like, nah, like I grind for this. Like, if you want to be elite at your craft, I think that slam poetry is an example like that. Like, if you want to just read a poem off your phone, like open mics exist for that reason.
Yeah.
Like, you could go to open mic, share your talent. It's beautiful. Like, your words are still beautiful. But when we're in this competitive slam space, it's important for folks to know that this isn't just an open mic. This is competitive slam poetry for a reason.
Yeah. And then another way I like to put it towards people, and I just use the Beehive, for example. I know a million people love Beyonce. You talk about Beyonce, they're willing to die and go to jail for her. But if Beyonce has performances, if she were to just come out, use her phone, and stay at the mic all day, nobody's going to be happy, because we know people sell their homes to go see Beyonce. So if you spend $5,000 for a ticket to see Beyonce because you're part of the Beehive, and she just reads from her phone, well, you know what? Maybe I shouldn't use her, because people just love Beyonce regardless. If I go to a 2 Chainz concert and he just hanging what I do and who I do, if I'm like, time out, brother, I did not pay this money to see you do your studio session. I paid to watch you perform. So you better move around this stage. You better ask the crowd to say something every now and then, but you are a performer. You should know your songs. I'm not here to see the studio session. I'm not here to see the mix sections with Shaka Zulu, Ludacris, and any of that. Take pride in your craft.
Hey, amen to that, brother. What advice do you have for someone who may be trying to take that step and elevate their poetry to a level where they can compete in the slam?
Study the ones who have successfully study the ones who have been successful in it, because and I say multiple people, because what you don't want to do is think, well, I got to copy their style because they're toured all over. Get get multiple styles, multiple people, and then see what they got in common. Because the one thing that people who tour and they got good at this and are well known, the one thing they got in common is repetition, repetition, repetition. And you see it in a performance. They give their all. They have great stage presence. You hear some of their words. You don't have to write the exact words, but you think, okay, maybe I need to up my pen game a little bit. So, study the craft, really envelop yourself in it, and you just get better with time.
Absolutely. I've only done one outside of being a sacrificial, but I've only done one slam in my life, and it was a San Diego versus anybody slam, I think in like 2017, 2016. And as we were preparing the Black Expression team, as we were preparing for that slam, my bro Ronnie and I were preparing our group piece. And as we were rehearsing it, there's a part in the piece where we bring up the names of some of the victims of police brutality. And one of the other artists on the team he stopped us as we were in that section. It was like, I don't believe that y'all are putting enough reverence on these names, and tell them, like, when I say these names, it means something to me, and really pushing us to bring out more emotion in that. And I think that was my moment where I was like, okay, this is a lot different than just getting on this stage and being loud or trying to be the loudest voice in the room. You're
Mhm.
really, like you said, this the eye contact that you're having with the audience. It's the emphasis that you're putting on certain words. Like, it's really a performance. And I think because we go to these slams in similar space that we have open mic, sometimes people lose sight of the fact that it is a very competitive performance. Like you said, 3 great minutes on stage is a result of 100 hours of preparation. I think that's put so beautifully.
Thank you.
Absolutely, my man. Transitioning a little bit, slight pivot. If the listeners can't tell by just the conviction that you speak with, you're also an inspirational speaker. How did you get into speaking as a profession and being able to motivate through speaking?
It kind of veered off from the poetry. That was me being in the Navy. My latter years, probably for my 10-year mark, I've been in a leadership position, so I always had people working for me. I was always facilitating the class. So when you in that position, you always got the young guys coming to you asking questions. It could be about work. Sometimes you got to help them deal with life struggles. They get in trouble. You got to give them the advice. Then you got to handle that. So um, I think it veered off from the poetry and that Navy experience, and just trying to help other people, elevate and get to a better place. Because at the end of the day, I want people. If you want to learn from me, I want to become better than me. Like,
Mm,
I helped you along the way, but I want you to elevate. Like, if I helped you
mm,
show you how to get 4 points in the game, I hope you score 24, and then you show the next man how to score 48, so forth and so forth and so on. So
mm.
yeah.
Do you find yourself when you're in audiences, and I'm thinking this because you and I both went to a banquet not too long ago and there were some motivational speakers there. Do you find yourself being critical or critiquing motivational speakers that you're in the audience for?
With motivational speakers, the only critique I would say is, I would think that if I hear them saying a bunch of nothing, I just think, man, can you please get off the stage? Because it's like, it's not necessarily how long you talk, because there's some people who've talked long, but they have kept you interested. But if you just up there saying a bunch of nothing, like, we ain't gonna even get into that. But it's just like, okay, bro, get off the stage. Yo, can we get some more biscuits to the table? We hungry. Cut on the music or something. That's the only pet peeve. Like, you get up there speaking, please say something interesting to keep the crowd engaged.
Absolutely. If there is anybody listening to this podcast who aspires to be a motivational or inspirational speaker, I think my biggest advice is just make sure you're saying something. It's more important to say something meaningful than it is to have a catchy, like, metaphor or a catchy saying, because I hate when people be like
Yeah,
pulling for the applause. And I'm like, you're not saying nothing though.
exactly. And now I'm thinking about that event. I'm like, I'm not gonna blast anybody, but I'm laughing in my head because of everything we talked about that. But yeah,
Yeah, folks will have to get those stories offline off the podcast. But just know, like, say something, but also if you, when we at these events, can you please feed us
yeah,
on time?
please, on time. Have everything, bro. I don't want to be told you got a chair and then we get it. There ain't no chairs. I want some. Look, it should be biscuits. Shout out to Alpha Phi Alpha because Preston Clark invited me to their thing last month. We get to the table, it was biscuits on the table. Okay, the
As they
food
should
wasn't
be.
there, but the biscuits was. Them bread rolls is crucial because I gotta wait for a bread roll and the butter. Oh, we gonna have some issues. But Alpha Phi Alpha, shout out to them boys. They ran that event very well. I give them that. They had the buttered rolls, and we was good to go from there. They also had a lot of yams up in there too.
Hey, as someone who has been event coordinator in the past, nothing makes me more happy than a well planned event, and nothing pisses me off more than a poorly planned event.
That
So
part.
that's been the advice segment of the Banquet Hall. Let's transition to you as an author. So, in terms of people I know personally, you have the record for the most books out of any human being that I personally know. You have 12 different books, and that is something that I think is inspiring to people by itself. Because I feel like before I met you and I would tell people I have 5 books, they're like, dang, you got 5 books. Then I met you, I'm like, oh, I got to come out with 7 books in the next 7 weeks, as far as I'm concerned. But just to start, the one question that I want to start with, because I think this is something that I've been reflecting on for myself as a artist as well. How does your art and your words translate differently through written words as opposed to what you may do at a poetry slam or your motivational speaking? Like, how is it different when you're writing these words and people receiving it in a written format?
Well, with poetry, it's because you have the time constraints. You have to be clever in how you tell a story, and you also have to be quick with it. With a book, uh, time is not of my disposal. I can lengthen it out as long as I want to. The only goal I have with the book is to keep it interesting. So as you read, you don't get bored with it. So as you thinking, the story's going down, up, it's coming back up. Ooh, it's at them. Ooh, it's even elevating more. So that's the key when you writing the book and the poetry.
Mm. And what about your writing process? As someone who has so many books, like, is it different for each book? Do you find inspiration in similar ways? Like, where do you get started with this book writing process?
It can all depend, man. It's like you might think of a subject or you see something on TV, you just driving, an idea pops in your head, excuse me, and then you're like, okay, how would I convey this into a story? And to be honest, the first page and the first sentence is the hardest thing because you have to capture the audience's attention on that first page because the first page is whack and they probably ain't gonna want to read the rest of the book. So your ideas can come from anywhere, and then it's just up to you to engage that story, put major points in there, just give the audience something that you believe they'll enjoy. And most of all, when you have a finished product, be able to take criticism,
Mm,
because we're not perfect as authors. You have friend, hey man, I like the story, but it was kind of dry between chapters 4 and 5. You need a little boost. So just take little tidbits like that and then just go from there and improve yourself.
mm. Fantastic advice. Something else I've heard from a lot of people, they ask, like, how is it possible to come up with so many words to have multiple books? And I think as an artist, I'm like, I don't think I could ever run out of words to write. Like, I may be able to run out of words to say, but I don't know if it's ever possible for me to run out of words to write. How do you feel about
Yeah,
that?
I feel the same way. Like where writing is indefinite, it's always gonna be something to write about. Like this latest book, Southern Fried Intimacy, coming out February 14th. It's my first romance novel. And the crazy thing was I was actually writing a romance novel, and then I went through a breakup during that romance novel.
Mm,
So I took 2 months off. I was like, damn, this kind of messed up. I'm writing a love story and I just broke up. I took 2 months off. I was like, I don't want to write this. I'm mad. And then I was gonna scrap it, but some said, keep this book. I was like, you know what? Let me take this in, my experiences. Let me take the experience I seen when I initially started writing this book, And then let me just keep it going because it's like
Mm,
I think about the other books I wrote. I wrote some books on deployment, and I had to deal with stuff during that, so I shouldn't stop this book because of this if I didn't stop the other books because of the other circumstances. So
mm.
that's just where I'm going from, man. So like I said, just keep going. You can find the motivation from anywhere. And then, if you do take a hiatus, just don't make it a long hiatus because it's always harder to come back after you taken so long off.
Absolutely. And you got ahead of me. That was my next topic itself, Southern Fried Intimacy, as you mentioned, dropping on Valentine's Day 2024. You'll be featuring at Black Expression that Friday, February 16th, where you'll have some of those books available for purchase. I think that your promo already for it has been excellent. Just hearing about that break and what happened in the writing process already makes me very excited to read the book itself. But what else do you think people can expect from Southern Fried Intimacy? Like, what's the elevator pitch on the book?
The elevator pitch for the Southern Fire Intimacy is I tie in so many topics outside of romance. So, for example, I one part in the story, one of the characters was basically asking, "Would you believe something just because it came from James Baldwin and Wiz Khalifa?" And what I was
Mm,
entailing into it was everybody know James Baldwin, quote unquote, arguably the greatest writer ever, and he was also openly gay. And then you got Wiz Khalifa, platinum selling rapper, tattooed head to toe. So, some people have the stereotype, oh, you're gay, so what you're saying doesn't matter. Oh, you're a tattooed rapper, or you're black and tattooed. So what you're saying can't be truthful when that's not the case at all. Like the old saying goes, listen to the message. It ain't all about if you don't like the message or not. The message is still the same. So I delve into topics like that. We talk about the missexualization of Black boys in the book. We go into therapy for Black men because that's something we avoid. We go into trauma bonding. We go into
mm,
proper healing. And it's a lot of subjects in the book. We also do a shout out. It's a section of the book where I highlight the Montgomery Beach brawl. We had kind of a scene in there, and I was like, if they read it down there, they'd be like, he kind of shot of us out, because hey, that was Black people coming together. So you can even look at that as like, bring togetherness. So I wanted to make sure that when people read it, it was like, okay, this just wasn't a romance novel. He was
right.
really delving on a lot of topics that we don't like to talk about.
Mm. And I think that's why Black storytelling is so important because you have a unique perspective as a Black male who's been in the Navy, who's traveled around the world and experienced all these different things. And your perspective in that is very important. And I love the analogy you use with Wiz Khalifa and James Baldwin because as I mentioned, we're recording this on Dr. King Day, and I went to an event this morning. And at that event, I just couldn't get out of my head enough with thinking about how often at this time of year, non-Black people call on Dr. King, talk about him, like idolize him in a way that, yes, like Dr. King is a renowned civil rights activist and leader,
Mm.
but we talk about him as a person so much and use his messaging. But when we really start to unpack the things that he wanted for us as Black people, I always in my head, I was just thinking like I hear people talk about their dreams every Friday on the mic when I go to Black Expression. I hear
Yep,
people talk about their dreams at the San Diego Poetry Slams. And it's like we still have ways to go. Like just because Dr. King gave that dream speech and we have this holiday doesn't mean that everything is all like honky dory and like we having a good time now.
true. You're right about that.
So Southern Fried Intimacy, February 14th on Valentine's Day. I'm definitely excited to get a copy of the book itself. Where can people buy it once it does drop if they're not able to make it to Black Expression?
So you can always order through my website, www.joemaxspeaks.com. All those will be autographed. If you want to support a Black business, me and my partner, Kawan Mayo, we run Uprock Publications. It is a LLC, uprockpublication.com. You can order his books, my books. We have one or two audios on there as well. And then, Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, every book platform, you can order from there as well.
Awesome. So getting to the tail half of the podcast, uh, I usually have a question about people who inspire you and influence you, but I specifically want to know when I say this name, what comes to mind. And the name is Mrs. Brenda Joshua.
Uh, if people didn't know angels could exist on Earth in the physical, it's her. She was the one who pulled the gift out of me. 11th grade year, still remember like it was yesterday. Kept me after class, told me you could write. I was like, okay, cool. She's like, you gonna write for me? No extra credit, no nothing for college, just for me. Was I mad? Yeah, I was like, I'm 15, 16, didn't want to do this. And then I can't even remember what I wrote for her, but I enjoyed it. Then she had me write a short story for the class, pass it around. They laughed and enjoyed it, and we just kept going from there. And that woman saved my life, and particularly my senior year. I had newspaper, and we were studying poetry, and she said, "Yo, you need to put your poetry in the school paper." I was like,
Mm.
"I run track, play football. You're not about to get me roasted." And she told me something I'll never forget. She said, women like words, and if you put your poetry in the paper, you might get some girls. And that's all I needed to hear. And then I was going to newspaper class, putting 2 or 3 poems in the paper. But like I said, when you get grown and realize years later she didn't care about the girls, she was just giving me the motivation to keep writing. And then so without Miss Joshua, there is no me. I love that woman as an angel on earth. I pray to God she's here for many more years because she's almost 90 and still ticking.
Mm.
The day she goes to heaven, God need to put her in the VIP line. That's my heart right there. She the one got me started to be Joe Mack.
Shout out to Mrs. Brenda Joshua. Hope she get her own statue up there in front of the pearly gates for you.
Man,
Who are
a statue from high school.
Hey, I rock
Close
with
that.
that. Who are some other people who have inspired or influenced you?
My grandmother, Mary Louise Washington, God rest her soul. She was she was the rock of the family. She motivated me. Of course, I got some Navy mentors, Tim Armstrong, my guy, Gamora Cameron, Justin Oxford. I've had a lot of people, junior sailors I worked under. It's a plethora of people. I find that you can get inspiration from anybody. It doesn't have to be a particular person, but yeah, big ones, Miss Joshua, my grandmother. Yeah, that's that's pretty much it. And other writers who just rubbed elbows with me, made sure iron sharp as iron. So I'm just appreciative of everybody I come across because I've been inspired by pretty much everybody I've come across.
Mm. And I love that answer. I think that answer is really fitting for the motivation behind the question, just because I feel like too often when or not too often, but often when we think of people who inspire us to influence us, we think about celebrities or people who are quote unquote notable, but you can really get inspiration just by having a conversation with a fellow human being, like somebody who's had an experience similar to yours or completely different. Inspiration can come in many forms. So I'm happy that you recognize just how many different people have inspired you and influenced you, some of them probably without even knowing.
Mhm.
And then next up, what is your Zen place? So, what are places that you like to go to that bring you like a peaceful state of mind?
Barnes and Nobles. I love bookstores in general, but something about a Barnes and Nobles with a Starbucks in it, where I can get a caramel macchiato hot with almond milk, no whip, and extra caramel. Uh, my girl Lola put me on to that when we were together. So, that's my happy space, a bookstore. Just give me a nice bookstore somewhere near the beach, and I'm good.
Hmm. What is it about the bookstore space that you feel brings you so much peace? Is it just being around so many books and you having a million books yourself, or?
It's being around books. It's just the ambiance of wondering what is everybody else doing because you go in there, like I went in there today. There's people in there with their laptops. Some people just going in there, get a coffee and sharing a conversation. And occasionally you look around, you're like, I wonder what they're doing, or I wonder what he's reading, or what are they talking about? It's just the ambiance and just the thinking about the what ifs, and it motivates me because
Mm,
I just see a bunch of people working, and if they're not working, they're just enjoying life. I tell people, is skip the club, skip the lounge on a Saturday night. Go to the Barnes and Nobles. I've had 2 dates in there before, and I'm like, they've been lit. You know, you get some egg and sausage, egg and the breakfast sandwiches with some coffee, and y'all just talking. You're like, this is a nice date. Like, so it just has a beautiful ambiance to it. I love bookstores.
I think this is going to make 3 weeks in a row where we've had conversations about dating advice. The first couple weeks being the 8 to 8:30 hour at Black Expression, and now we get to have the conversation on the podcast. So definitely adding Barnes and Noble date to the list because when I was in high school, obviously I grew up in LA, and so every weekend we had nothing to do, so we go to the mall. We go to this place called the Bridge, and at the Bridge.
Mhm.
I think they had a Borders at the time, or it might have been Barnes and Noble. But either way, it was a bookstore. And after we went to see a movie, we would literally just go to the bookstore, sit on the ground, and
Mhm.
just kick it. And it was just something
Yeah.
so intimate about those spaces. You might find a random book in the section that you're in talking about that, but I look back at those moments very fondly because it's just like you say, you just what are these people up to? Like, what are these people doing here on a Friday night, Saturday night? It's so lovely.
And I think too to add, the bookstore is one of the places where you don't have to worry about no mischief taking place. Like I ain't got to worry about nobody fighting over the aisle, fighting over a book in the mystery section or nothing. Everybody in there just to chill and relax. And if something do happen, it's just something outside that's out of our control. Because readers, we can look up, ain't my business, and we can just go back to doing what we doing. So that's another thing I love about bookstores. It's a place of peace, not just for
Man.
your inner self, but ain't nothing gonna pop off.
Man, and I think that looking up ain't my business. That's a skill that more people need in their life. Like, just recognize
Yeah,
what ain't your business.
that part.
And I think just being with a book is just also intimate personal experience. And I was just talking, I think I was talking to my dad about this a couple nights ago, but I went to a bar with a friend and there was this woman there who was reading at the bar, like in her zen, like just her and her book, chilling, having her a drink. But then this family came with kids at the bar and the kids was running all around the bar, throwing a ball and whatnot. And the look on her face because they disturbed her zen and her peace with her book, I was like, I feel you because you did not come here to be around a bunch of little kids. Like you came here
Yeah,
to sip your beer and read your good book.
that part.
Let's see. Outside of what we've discussed, what else do people need to know about you to get a complete picture of who you are? Whether it's things that you're interested in, passionate about, things that piss you off.
First thing first, you need to know about me. I'm a tattoo junkie. I have I've lost count how many tattoos. I got pretty much my whole upper torso is done except for my left ribs and my stomach. I love tattoos. Things that pisses me off, the 405 in LA. That's number one. I don't mind traffic, but LA doesn't classify as traffic. It classifies as just a pissed off session. Like, yo, but yeah, bad Mexican food pisses me off because I've lived out here so long.
I
Like
feel that.
I go somewhere, I go out of state and eat something and be like, are you serious? Like I want to fight everybody here. But I love tattoos. I'm a Hallmark junkie. I love watching Hallmark movies. I'm a hopeless romantic. 8 o'clock on Saturday nights, I'm usually parked in front of my TV watching the new Hallmark movie. I don't like Lifetime because Lifetime always want to talk about somebody getting murdered, i.e., the Jolie Ayers story. So what else do I like? I love seafood. Seafood
Mm,
is always good with me. Good coffee every blue moon because I don't drink it like that, a caramel macchiato. And yeah, I love to cook. Love to
mm.
cook, so I can cook a woman into a whole relationship. I've done it before. So hey, and cook a
What's
man. Hey, I cook for her and you be out of a relationship, player.
what's
Yeah,
the
she
meal
don't
that
even want to
gets
come home to you no more.
what's the meal that gets her out the relationship?
Stuffed chicken breast that is bacon wrapped with chicken fettuccine from scratch, stuffed portobello mushrooms. I actually wrote that in Southern Fried Intimacy because that meal is the go-to meal. That is like the meal. I don't know. It's something when you wrap something in bacon. It's like it just becomes so much more. Like it don't even matter. Like you can put a carrot in bacon. Somebody be like, "Yo, like that fucking carrot is fire." I think I need to give him some. Like and a carrot and bacon ain't gonna taste good together, but it's just because it's in bacon. anything with bacon is just better. Like that's just how it is. When you put
Uh,
bacon on anything, like it's like y'all about to scrap or something. Like, hold on, there's some bacon coming. Well, let's hold the fight off. Let's eat this bacon, and then we can talk about some things. Yeah, I love some bacon, but the bacon wrap anything is the key to a woman's heart.
Banquet Hall podcast was sponsored by Oscar Mayer Bacon. Catch that at your local grocery stores. Always
Oh
got to stay
man.
on host mode. Oscar Mayer, if y'all listening, go ahead and sponsor this episode. Where can people find you and how can people support you?
You can find me on Instagram at Artist Joe Mack, Facebook, the government name, Joe McClain Jr. Obviously, my website, joemackspeaks.com. And yeah, you can follow me there, follow where I'm going. And yeah, that's pretty much where you can keep tabs on me.
And we mentioned Southern Fried Intimacy already, but any other shameless plugs, anything you want to shout out or manifest on the podcast?
Yes, I will be at Ohio State February 21st for their one of their Black History events, put on by the Brothers of Omega Psi-Phi. I'll be featured there. Then I'll be in DC and Alexandria, Virginia on the 23rd and 24th of that month. I have the Cicada Poetry Slam competition in Albuquerque, New Mexico from March 21st through the 24th. Some heavy hitters in that slam. We got Black Chakra out of Baltimore. We got Bree Blue from the Bay Area. So it's some heavy hitters in that thing. So I'm looking forward to competing, honing my skills with the best.
Absolutely. And highly encourage y'all, if y'all happen to be listening in those areas or happen to be in those areas, to check Joe Mack out. I'm not just saying it because you're on a podcast and because I know y'all really do love when you perform, just because I could tell that you're not just being loud. And I think that's one of the reasons why I wanted you to have you on a podcast, truly, because there's some people who just yell and they talk very emphatically
Yeah.
and with conviction. But when you really get to know who these people are and getting to know who you are more through this podcast, there's so many different layers and so many different lived experiences that shape how you see this world. And yes, you have that persona when you are in front of a slam open mic or a slam mic and you're yelling, but it's passion. It's not just you yelling. So I definitely encourage y'all to check out Joe Mack wherever he may be near you. A couple more questions, then I'm gonna get you out of here. First one is a reflective question. What are your takeaways from this episode, and what do you hope our listeners are taking away from this episode?
That's my takeaways. It's just always good to just let your hair down and you give the people an honest version of you. Because sometimes, when you're a writer, you're a poet, you feel that, at least this is how I feel, that people are just seeing that as the only version of me. He's the poet. I love stuff like this because you can see me in my human element, sitting in my house, relaxed, just answering questions, giving my opinions on stuff. So that's the beautiful thing I take away, and I'm glad you providing this space.
Absolutely. And don't forget the applesauce too. You sitting at home with the applesauce going.
Yep. Finish that last little corner. I love applesauce. Shameless plug. You ever want to give me a gift? Applesauce.
Make sure y'all send, if you're listening, send Joe a nice glass of applesauce or a nice jar of applesauce. What about our
Yes.
listeners? What do you hope our listeners are taking away with them?
Just like I said, seeing you're seeing me. You're seeing me in my element. You seeing me. I talked about yammies. I love Black women. Where they say Black women are dope. Period. I love Black women. I love yammies. I love tall yammies. I'm a brother. I love the 5'7" and ups. Nothing against you, demon heights. There's the 5'3" and below, but I like them tall. I like the skyscrapers. That's just me. Everybody know my Lola bunny is the 5'7", 5'8". Hey, that's just how it is, man. But I just hope y'all see the real me. The tattoos, how much I love Black people, love Black women, all that.
No one could ever say that you don't love Black people. I think that you loving Black people is such a core of who you are, whether it's the clothes that you have on. Like, I never fail to notice when you're at Black Expression, whether it's a George Floyd hoodie or whatever hat you may have on, like pro-Blackness is all around you. And as far as my takeaway from this episode, I think that my takeaway for the listeners and for myself is that it's okay to want to be great at what you do. Like, I think that sometimes people let the spirit of competition get the best of them, but it's good to really grind for your craft and want to be the best at what you do and to put yourself out there, be open to critique. And yeah, the last question of the podcast is just recommendation corner. Any recommendations for our listeners for books other than your own, podcasts, movies, songs, anything that you would recommend that people check out, either to get to know you on a deeper level or just something that you think is dope that more people need to check out?
Ronald Preston Clark's Vinny. That is one of the most well-written masterpieces that I have written. He's a local San Diego person, graduate of Morse High School. He went to the real HU, as he says, Hampton University. Nothing against Howard, but they're the real HU, according to him and his people. That is a masterpiece of a book. And then I would recommend, of course, my own stuff. And then Ralph Ellison, The Invisible Man. That is my all-time favorite book. I can read that back and forth all day, every day with no qualms.
Invisible Man. If you haven't read Invisible Man, 100% agree with that. Definitely check out Invisible Man, as well as Vinny. I remember when Preston first dropped Vinny, and I know that's a project that he was very passionate about, took a lot of thought and effort, put that into it. So definitely check that out. And Preston, if you listen to this, shout out to you and the work that you have done as an artist as well as with the youth. I think that I couldn't give enough flowers to people that I've interacted with in my lifetime. I think that's what I've really grown to learn and appreciate over the last few years, is to be able to give people flowers while they can hear them. And Joe, you've been so gracious with your time. It's been a pleasure to get to know you more in this podcast episode and be able to share your story with the listeners of this podcast. I always mention at the end, we give y'all 5-star content. Make sure you leave that 5-star rating. Tap in with Joe on his website, joemacspeaks.com. Buy the book that's coming out, Southern Fried Intimacy, on Valentine's Day. But he got 11 more of them things, and by the time you finish listening to this, he might have 3 more. You never know. But make sure y'all follow the podcast at Banquet Hall Pod. But Joe, any last words before we close out?
I just appreciate you, man. Keep doing what you're doing. Very proud of you. Hope you take this to the next level. Thanks to everybody who tuned in. And I hope you get your copy of Southern Fried Intimacy on Valentine's Day, and also have you some intimacy on Valentine's Day. You ain't got to go up in it, but at least be with somebody who's going to show you some love, get a nice bite to eat, or just spend time with somebody. This is the season of love. I have my reservations already.
Hey, I couldn't close the podcast out better than that. Thank y'all for tuning in. We'll catch y'all next time.